Welcome everybody to the Central Oregon Fly Tyers Guild, class number 10 for this particular sessions. And I would like to introduce you my longtime friend and sometimes employer, Jeff Perin. So Jeff, take it away. The floor is yours.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks, guys. Well, it's wonderful to be here. This week has been kind of a Zoomy week. I've been teaching for the past several weeks on Tuesday evenings from about 4 to 6, fly tying for a select group of people that signed up for a fly tying class that I'm teaching right now. That's been going really well. We've been having anywhere from 6 to 12 people come to my Tuesday classes. And, you know, I mean, it's just kind of the sign of the times, right? We're doing these things by Zoom to stay healthy, keep each other healthy. And you know, it's not quite as the same as being face to face with everybody in a room and stuff, but I sure do love it. You know, I sure do like seeing people on here and being able to share, you know, stories and knowledge, and yeah, it's fun. So I'm gonna tie a couple of pretty unique flies today. One of them is a water boatman pattern that the inspiration came from a Phil Rowley floating water boatman. But one of the things that I found with a lot of water boatman flies that we can find for sale in a fly shop is, so they're frankly just a little big. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit share screen mode here because I would like to show you. Host disabled participant screen sharing. You're gonna need to let me share my screen.
Let me see, where do I do that? I am going to see if I can make you make host. I'm going to make you the host.
Okay. Done?
You should be able to now.
Yeah, should be able to now. Perfect. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, in this little Petri dish of stomach throat pump samples is a whole bunch of water boatmen from a fish that came out of Crane Prairie recently. And you can see that those are some pretty small little water boatmen. They're you know, 16s and 18s, and they you know, move about with great ease in the lake, and at a couple of different times of the year actually have the ability to use wings and fly, you know, from one part of the lake to another, or from one body of water to a completely other body of water. So they've got an interesting life cycle in that they're primarily nymphs, but they can, you know, come up to the surface and flutter about at the surface. And so this water boatman is designed to be fished either as a dry fly or as a nymph, and I'll explain that to you here in a minute. I'm gonna go down here. I got a lot of fish pictures on here, you guys. Oh, look at this though. That's my boat. That's my boat fishing over a weed bed at Polana last year. Be a good place to fish this water boatman fly. So let's see, where is I know it's right in here somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so here's a really great photograph I just took from the web a water boatman at rest on the bottom of the lake. But you can see the mottled, top end of the body and those red eyes, the extreme, taper from the head back to the tail end of that fly. And, that's what I'm trying to kind of mimic when I came up with this fly is a lot of those features that you see on that natural. So I want the fly to be able to, oh, hang on, I gotta start a app here. I wonder if I do actually. Yeah, I think. No, I have that grid. I'm gonna start an app to get into. Okay, so when I came up with this fly, I was very inspired by Phil Rowley's floating water boatman, which I've had pretty darn good success with at Hosmer from time to time, at Crane Prairie from time to time. But I always felt that it was just a little bit big, and he has Montana Fly Company produces flies, and they don't sell it in any smaller sizes. So it was my job after a guide trip one night to say, I gotta come up with a better solution so that my clients can catch more fish tomorrow. And this fly has been through a couple of iterations, and this is what I've settled with as we kind of moved along with that. Sorry, I'm trying to set up a camera and talk at the same time. All right, so I'm gonna get started with the fly tying, and I'll keep chatting about this, how to fish it and the design of this fly. Is anybody, I'm just curious, is anybody tying along with me, or are you just watching? Sherry, do you know?
Yeah, I think they're watching.
Okay, just watching. All right.
Yeah, because I'm putting this on our YouTube channel so they can pay more attention to what's going on and then watch it and tie with it afterwards.
Yep. So originally when I tied this fly, I used a standard nymph hook, kind of a lighter wired nymph hook, standard shank. But I've settled now on a jig hook, and with the way I like to fish this fly, either as a dry fly or on a light sink tip, the jig hook works really well for fishing this fly. In that, if you're fishing it on like a midge tip or a clear camo intermediate, hover line is another good one to use with this. The fly itself is going to land on the surface of the water. The line will get down below it, and then you can start to do a little retrieve, and you can bring that fly, down with the line, stop the retrieve, it'll float back up, and you can, keep sweeping it underneath the surface of the lake. So
we have a question from Terry Martin. What kind of thread? What color?
This is 6/0 yellow, and all the materials lists are in the handout there. This is a 6/0 yellow danville that I'm using. So I'm going to start with a 1/8 diameter tan foam cylinder. You could also use red. Originally, when I first tied this fly, I really wanted to mimic those red eyes on that natural water boatman. And so I was using just a 3mm foam, cutting it in a really fine strip, and then just figure eighting around that in lieu of the cylinders. But I've chosen to go with the tan cylinders and then just color the ends of them red. Okay. Once those are secured with some good figure eights, and you know that they're locked into place, you can come back.
Jeff, a quick technical question. Your camera focus keeps going in and out.
Yeah, I don't have any way to fix it. But only The only way that I can do it is to bring my hand back to the vise, and I'll do that periodically. So it's the best I've learned how to do. I just learned how to do it this way about a week ago. So I'm sorry, but I know that it does that. But when I get my hand back towards the fly, it focuses right back in there. So bear with that.
We can do that. I just didn't know the status of things.
Yeah.
So are you using your phone for
Yeah,
the
my
second
iPhone.
camera? Okay.
Yeah, it's you had me buy this little cam, and this is way better.
It is, because Apple has such a great camera.
Yeah. So okay, so what I've done is I've cut a strip. This is just packing foam, all right, and I've just cut a strip of it. It is about the width, maybe just a little bit more than the gap of this hook. So that's a good starting point. Like how thick should it be? Well, it should be about the width of the gap of your hook. I'm going to lay that in here at the bend of the hook, and I'm actually going to bring my tying thread up to those eyes and kind of secure that foam down along the entire shank length of that. It doesn't matter. In the directions that I sent you, I said to tie in the legs next, but frankly, it doesn't matter whether you tie in the legs now or the step before. But legs are helpful. The legs that I'm using are a barred round medium brown and black rubber leg. I've tried lots of different legs. I think this one works just as well as any. So I'm going to cut off a little strip of that. And right behind the eye of the hook, or right behind the foam eyes, excuse me, I'm going to put those in and do a little figure 8 turn around those until they're secure. And now I'm going to take the foam forward. Catch the foam with a couple of wraps behind those foam eyes, then pull it through the foam eye. And make a small head behind the eye of the hook. Cut that. And I'm just going to whip finish. And that kind of cleaned up that head area. Now, I'm going to take my red marking pen, and on the outside edge of that foam, I'll put red mark on there. And I'm going to turn it, do the same. I'll come in here with a brown Copic marker. You can use a Sharpie. Brown Sharpie is just as good. Color all that foam on the top. Come in with a black, do a little modeling. And then on the bottom, I'm just going to catch just a little bit of an olive green on the bottom of that fly. And then I'm going to take my legs and trim them so that they're even. And that is the finished water boatman. So again, you can fish this on a floating line, dry, nice fairly long leader, probably a 5x fluorocarbon tippet. You can fish it right on the surface when the fish are chasing water boatmen that are coming to the surface and flying around. That happens usually best in the fall. You can also fish this on a sinking line or a sink tip line and let it originally fish on the surface and then strip it so that the weight of the sinking line makes it sweep down like it's diving back underneath the surface of the lake. So I'll go ahead and tie just one more of those here. If anybody has any questions at each step, go ahead and ask.
I have a question while you're doing that, Jeff.
Jerry, one thing, it's been a while since I did one of these classes with you. How long do the classes typically go?
About an hour to an hour and a half,
Okay.
depending on.
All
I
right.
did
so
notice that
coming
a
in-
lot of people don't want to leave when we finish tying. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah. So
And somehow or another, your volume went off, so I had to turn you up again.
Jeff, quick question about your foam coloring.
Yeah.
I've used that packing foam for extended body mayflies in the past
Yeah.
and found that after I fished them for a while, suddenly my green drake became a white drake. The coloring, the Sharpies and stuff get washed off. Is that something you've experienced, or do you have a way?
I know what you mean. I use that foam too for like Buncy natural duns, and they certainly don't hold their color as well. I wouldn't say that they've become white, but I would do one of two things with this fly in regards to that. I would tie up maybe 8 or 10 of them for the box, and then if one starts to fade out in color after it's been in the water or a few fish's mouths, then just put it away and tie another one on, or just throw a few extra marking pins in your tackle bag and mark them back up again. But I would say probably the way to go would be just to have enough in your box, and then those ones that fade out, they're probably going to be still just fine for fishing another day. Just take them back to the vise and touch them up again. But I have not had the same problem with them turning completely white. That is a bummer, though. I can imagine that would be a pretty devastating after tying an extended body mayfly that takes as much time as I know, like a Buncy dun does, and then have it just turn white after you spend all that time tying that extension on the needle and everything. So
That was the pattern.
that is a great fly, isn't it?
Jeff, I've got a question. Is there a particular manufacturer of the jig hook that you prefer?
I am not really. Right now I'm using a. Let me look. I'm using a fully mill. This is a fully mill 34045. It's a 2 extra heavy 50-degree head on there. Yeah, so that's a favorite. I like a lot of Montana Fly Company jig hooks, especially like their short shank jig. It's really a wonderful hook to use. Okay, pulling that foam back over the body, we can just to be really careful with that outside. For me, it's the one that you're seeing. Don't want to catch that in the thread and have it get kind of in a weird position, and then I'll come underneath those eyes and come back here, make a little head.
Jeff, is there a particular time of year when the water boatman is more active or more available for the fish?
Yeah, in the spring and in the fall is when they're a lot more active and a lot more available to the fish, when fish are really going to key in on them. And some of our lakes out here in Central Oregon, the desert lakes, will turn on to water boatmen pretty early in the year, sometimes as early as March, just depending on the weather, but certainly April and May can be incredibly productive times with water boatmen on some of the desert lakes and private lakes that you would find on people's ranches, around central and eastern Oregon. On the Cascade Lakes, the stuff that gets a little bit higher in elevation, you're looking at probably, later in May and into June when they'd be most active at the first part of the season, just depending on elevation of that lake and ice out times. But in all cases, in all the lakes around here, you're going to see them get really active again in the fall. I would say kind of, mid-September. That photo that I showed you that came out of a stomach pump sample or a throat pump sample of the fish at Crane Prairie, that was actually taken on September 11th, 2019. Really for about a month after that, those water boatmen were showing up on a pretty regular basis in the throat pump sample.
Hey, Jeff, did you tie that foam off in front of the lakes or behind the lakes? When you...
I tied it in between the legs and the eyes is where the tie-off point is behind the eye, and then I stretched the foam in between the eyes
Right.
for that just to kind of fill in over the eye area there.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Yeah, I am seriously considering, because of how many Zoom flight time classes I'm doing now, buying a really good camera for that I can set on a tripod here and just like manually focus to get the perfect long-term in focus shot that doesn't do what the iPhone does, which is, I know it's annoying. It's annoying to me to turn and look at the screen and be like, oh, I got to get my hand there to bring it back into focus. Just to have that, kind of always be in focus would be such a gift for me and for you. I'm taking Nikon gift certificates as trades or bribes. All right.
Can we see the bottom of the fly when you're done?
You bet. With a couple black stripes here.
Well, I really like the two camera setup you've got.
There's the top. Let me grab my on the bottom.
Jeff, are you trimming those legs to a particular length or just whatever feels good that day?
Whatever feels good to me. Yeah. I like them to maybe be a little longer than say, the total length of the hook shank, just from the standpoint that, water boatmen themselves are really active swimmers, and they use those oar-like legs that they have for some pretty quick propulsion. So by keeping those long, and when you're stripping the fly at rest when a water boatman is just kind of laying there, in the water and waiting around to prey on something, their legs are out like this. They're kind of just out like little drift boat oars off the side of the boat. But when they're moving, they really kick quickly. And so the longer these legs are, the more they're going to be able to move. If I cut them really short, they wouldn't have much opportunity to get much movement out of them. And I think that movement of those legs is definitely a key factor in the fish's ability to hunt that fly down and look for something that looks lively and natural. So I like to leave the legs a little bit longer.
Okay, thanks.
Anyway, super cool fly. Definitely add it to your lake box for next season. All right, let's try a couple of, we'll start with a pale morning dun version of this next fly. So I think, I know a lot of people on this Zoom tonight are very into technical trout fishing. I zoomed through and saw who's here, and I know a lot of you guys are really into technical trout fishing, and with that technical dry fly trout fishing, as I am. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. And so, we all have little tweaks of patterns, and this is my tweak on a few different flies that kind of come together in one fly that I've had a lot of success with over the last few seasons since I started tying this fly. And I use it mostly on the Metolius and the Fall River. The first time I tied this fly, I tied it for a trip to the Fall River with some buddies. We were fishing up in the headwater section in the spring a few years ago, and I just thought, I'm gonna try it this way, and the fish really approved, and so I started tying it in other sizes and colors to match other mayflies. But the real, the real inspiration of this fly, I think, is the sparkle gun. Craig Matthews, incredible adaptation of a comparadun. Tassie and Tassie's comparadun has always been a favorite of mine since I first started fishing and fly fishing, back in the 80s. But the sparkle dun was generally an improvement to the comparadun, and that little trailing chuck made the fly look a little bit more vulnerable to the fish. So I took that, stage and added it to the fly. I took a thread body because I think in a lot of cases thin wins. And so the thinner the body, the more there is for the fish to dislike. It just looks so natural sitting in the water. It's so thin. There's nothing there to throw them off. Like, oh, that can't be real. And then I chose to use a winging material that I wanted that would accept a lot of powder floatant, which I really like to use as a floatant. And that would remain really dry and be easy to split into a split wing on these dry flies. And so this is a material from Hairline. It's called Parapost Wing, and they actually treat this material with a product called Watershed. So before you get this out of the package, it's already been treated with a hydrophobic treatment called Watershed. And that helps a lot in keeping this dry fly afloat. So for the PMD version, I'm going to use the lighter gray wing, and for the blue wing olive version, I'm going to use the medium dun color. And honestly, I don't think it would matter that much if you use one of these colors on both flies. But we'll pretend that it matters, and I'm going to use it that way. Okay, so I'm going to start with the same thread I just used, the 6/0.
What book is that, Joe?
This is a let me remember here. This is a MFC 7190. It's a merger hook that Montana Fly Company makes. All right. So first thing I always like to do is make a nice base of thread onto the hook. And then I've got a little piece of this Parapost wing material. I'm going to tie it in across the top by figure eighting around about a third of the way back from the eye of the hook, maybe a little closer than that, a quarter of the way from the eye of the hook. I just kind of figure eighted around that like you would tie in a spinner wing. At this point, we could go in and tie in a tail and call it good, and this would be a spinner. Okay, but we're going to post each one of these wings. So I'm going to hold on to the wing that's on the far side of me, and I'm going to come around that wing like you would tie a parachute post about 3 or 4 times for each wing. But once I got around that, I wanted to make sure that once I was letting go of that particular wing, that I got a wrap of thread around the shank of the hook. And then from that point, I'm going to take the other wing and post it with an equal number of turns that I did on wing on the opposite side. And then I'm going to make sure that I get around the hook again so that those posts don't come undone. Okay. So what you have, if you look at your directions, where I took the photographs of that, you have two really, really tightly packed posts right at the bottom of that, which is going to keep those wings, you know, separated, which is important for the outcome of how this fly looks on the water and how it floats. Yeah, I can trim off just a little bit of this now, but I'll trim those to length more here in a bit when I'm done with the fly. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to the bend of the hook, and I'm going to use brown Zelon. You can either use a straight brown Zelon or a brown Zelon with some crinkle. I'm going to do the crinkle on this. I just love this color, this lighter brown color on this particular Zelon, which came from Blue Ribbon Flies in West Yellowstone. I'm going to now take that Zelon at the bend of the hook. I'm going to start tying that down, getting the thread to completely cover the Zelon that's underneath there. That created, I didn't have any extra trimming, and I'm just now using my thread to bury that Zelon under on the top of the hook shank. And the only thing I need to pick up my scissors for is to trim the tail a little shorter. All right, here's where you're gonna use a tonal dubbing to essentially the same color as your thread. Okay, so in this case, I'm using a Fly-Rite golden amber dubbing. Fly-Rite has been a favorite dubbing of mine for dry flies for a lot of years. It's what I grew up with, tying since the 80s, and kind of missed it. And I tracked down the company. I didn't know that they were still in business, and I tracked down the company last year and contacted them via email. They got back to me, and I told them I'd like to sell their product at the store. So I've got about, I don't know, 8 of my favorite hatch matching, mayfly hatch matching anyway, colors on the shelf at the shop, and they make some really cool stuff. So I'm just putting on a little dubbing noodle onto the thread, just enough to put a couple of wraps of dubbing behind the wing, come back and forth through the wing, which I'll show you in just a minute, and a couple of wraps in front of the wing. All right, so I'm going to scoot that up just a touch, tighten it after I scoot it. Yeah, 1, 2. Make sure I don't catch any of those fibers of the parapost wing. Then I'm going to come through the wing one direction, through the wing the other direction, and then just kind of work that dubbing up against those wings to keep them upright. And for dry flies, I don't like to put head cement on my dry flies. I really like the fly to remain light. So what I'd like to do is keep that dry fly as light as possible without adding any extra glues. And so I do a double whip finish and then throw them in my box. All right, so you want your wings on these to be about the length of the hook shank, okay? So I'm gonna use my scissor tips as calipers, and then I'm just gonna kind of come in here and get an eyeball on how much I need to trim off of these wings. Give those a little haircut. And with some Shimakaze dry shake on that fly and the wings and the tail, I guarantee you that fly is going to float really well. It's going to be a really easy profile for the fish to approve of. And it's just this is just a good, easy fish catcher. The hardest part about doing this fly is splitting those wings, but I would guess that all your skills are going to be like, no problem. I can split those wings super easily. So I'll do one more. If you have some questions as I'm trying this, please Yeah.
Don't see any questions in the chat.
Sorry,
Easy.
Jeff, I missed the measure for the height of the wing posts.
So I use the scissor tips as calipers, just
Yep.
to get kind of a good idea, just to make sure. And then I would transfer that scissor tip caliper up to the wing and then cut it. I'll do it again here in just a second.
Yeah, it's just the length of the shank, eh?
Yeah, length of the
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm making dinner for family in the same time here.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
does the shuck color matter if you're doing it in like a bluing olive versus a PMD?
No, not much. I think most mayflies are gonna tend trend towards the brown shuck color. Certainly on Calabatus, I prefer to use a gray or olive shuck over brown. But most of the PMDs are kind of a rusty colored brown, and bluing olives are dark brown. Sometimes they can be a really darkish black olive. But once they get to this stage, and this is looking like the shuck is starting to become empty behind it, it's got some translucency because the fly itself, the mayfly, has now crawled out of most of that shuck, leaving the shuck fairly empty. And at that point, light's able to penetrate through it. I doubt that it makes that much difference. There could even be an argument for tying some with like a really light gray or white shuck. I've done a little bit of playing around with white shucks, and they seem to work pretty equally as well as brown shucks. Using like a white Antron or Zelon.
Okay, thanks.
Posting each one of these wings. And again, when that post is done right, you can see it's a really nice split. You can really, the photo that I took in your directions that Sherry sent out certainly gives you a really detailed view of that split. I sometimes like to come in and just kind of twist those wings up just a little bit here, just to kind of get all the fibers so that there's not one that gets rogue on you and ends up getting tied in with your tying thread in the process of kind of going through the rest of this, the steps of this fly. I still got a little piece of brown Zelon here from the last one. I'm going to tidy up the ends on that.
Jeff, could you fish this on a lake during
Yeah,
the
you can find
Calabatus
it.
hatch?
Sure. It's funny how often the Calabatus up at East Lake particularly will hatch in this kind of yellowish color. Very sulfury Calabatus there, particularly kind of in that July time period. They tend to oftentimes be really sulfury colored. So a light Cahill or light Cahill parachute can be a very good fly for the Calabatus hatch at East Lake. So I would definitely have this in the box, Sherry, this exact fly for East Lake, but I would probably be more inclined to tie it in, a thread color, kind of like this, which is, this is called sand, but it's
Sand.
kind of a grayish tan color of thread.
The same shuck color, right?
Well, for Calabatus, I was just mentioning, I think Drew that asked that question. I was just mentioning that the Calabatus nymphs are more often pretty olive colored. So I would do an olive Zelon for
Okay.
the shuck on a Calabatus. But I've caught lots of fish at East Lake with a brown shucked Calabatus, like sparkle done. It works. But if you're really trying to match the natural, and we have, we're lucky, we tie our own flies. We have the ability to do that. We can look and see what those nymphs and duns and stuff look like, and so we can adjust shuck color where you can't go into the fly shop and say I want a gray comparidon with an olive trailing shuck, or a gray sparkle dun with an olive trailing shuck. Well, I'm sorry, we only have the sparkle duns with brown tails because that's all the companies offer it in. So this is the beauty of tying your own flies.
We have a question here from Jim Nichols.
Yes.
Here's a step question, but it's hard to see for him. When wrapping the split wing, are you wrapping it around the wing and the hook, or just the wing on each side?
Well, I do 3 or 4 posts onto each wing. So if I come around and I have the post in my hand, I'm posting one wing at a time by just wrapping around the wing. Before I transition to that next side, if this is the wing that I'm doing first, the one on the camera side, I would wrap only around the wing 3 or 4 times, posting that wing. Then I would come a couple of times around the hook shank just to make sure that that locks into place, okay? Then I would pull the wing closest to me and wrap around just the wing 3 or 4 times, and then come back around the hook shank, and then that thread's not gonna be able to pull off of the posts on the bottom of those wings. That makes sense, Jim?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Got one rogue wing fiber there. Yeah. There it is.
I like it.
It's worth tying, you guys. Tina and I'm going to do a blue wing olive version here right now. Tina and I were on the Metolius a few days ago, and I tied this on for her, and her luck changed really fast. In fact, I had caught 3 fish on a similar fly with a CDC wing, and then suddenly she caught 2, and I said to her, "We got to go. We got stuff to do." I did. The honest answer was I just didn't want her to, overtake me on the catch rate. So it's the reason we had to go.
Did you tell her that, or should I?
No, don't. That's just our secret. Yeah.
What happens in Zoom stays in Zoom?
Yeah. All right, so I'm down to a size 18. You can do this in a 20. This hook is like 2 extra short. So an 18 fishes, more like a 20 hook shank length in this hook. So, I would definitely recommend tying the olive version of this in both 18s and 20s, maybe even 22s for certain waters and hatches that you may encounter. And then in the yellow, I would do 14, 16, 18. That'll cover Synigmulas, Epioris, Pale Evening, and Pale Morning Duns. And as we mentioned, even some Calabatus hatches that could occur locally on some of your waters. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, back behind the eye of the hook, and I'll try to demonstrate for you, Jim, that process of what I'm doing here with the wing. So right now you can see that they are simply just split like you would tie a spinner wing. All right, with my thread in between the eye and the wing, I'm now going to grab the wing that's farthest away from me. I'm going to come over the top of the wing itself, and I'm going to catch my thread with my pinky around with the bobbin there, come around only the wing, it's not going around the hook, catch it with my pinky, around the wing only with the thread, catch again with my pinky. I'm not coming around the hook shank at all yet. I've got 4 wraps there, and I haven't let go of that wing one time, and I have not yet gone around the hook shank until right now, when I'm going to come around it with a couple wraps. Then I'm going to come in behind the other wing, the one that's closest to me, and catch that. Only around the wing. It's not going any around metal at this point, just around soft wing material. 4 times. And then once I get that posted, I'm gonna just quickly make a couple of wraps around the hook shank, and that'll make sure that those posts stay locked into place. It's really easy when you're posting to pull on the thread in the wrong direction and have all that come off of the post that you just made. Okay, so by locking your thread around the shank of the hook, that won't happen. I'm just going to trim those shorter now, just so they're a little more manageable for me to tie in and amongst, or around them. But you can see kind of the direction that's going. So I'm gonna use a little darker brown Zelon on this one.
Is that olive thread, Jeff?
This is olive thread, yeah. This is olive Danville 6/0. Tying in the tail, trimming the trailing shuck. And now I've got what I consider to be one of the greatest bluing olive dubbing colors ever invented. This package says Orvis on it, but it's a fly right dubbing, same as this. You can see that Orvis just branded it. I don't even know how long I've had this package of dubbing, but it was $1.15 at the fly box, probably in about 1982.
It's so darky.
So I can see.
Is that one of the colors you stocked, Jeff?
Yeah, it's called Western Olive. Yeah, it's definitely one of the colors that we stock. I've also got golden amber. There's a golden olive, great calabatus here, speckled dun. Adams gray is another good calabatus color. Also works well for mahogany duns. This medium brown dun variant's great for mahogany duns and darker calabatus. Notice how thin that is, right? We don't want to add a lot of bulk to this fly. We just want it to create a little bit of a built up thorax and give it the fly a little bit more flotation. And this dubbing is going to take care of both of those needs. Just see how it just kind of figure eighted through the wings. That keeps them separated. Okay, I'll show you that trick again here, what I'm talking about with the kind of using your scissor points as calipers. I've got the tips of those scissors right in front of where the tail starts and right behind where the eye is. Okay, so if I don't squeeze the scissors in here and I take that length and come up to this wing, you can see that that wing is still a bit long. Now I may want to keep that a bit long. I may want the wing to be a little bit long so that when it comes into the fish's window, they have cone of vision, and if it's coming this way, they're gonna see that taller wing first. This is a theory that I think was in maybe the Dry Fly by Gary LaFontaine. It might have been in one of the Mayfly, the Angler and the Trout, or one of Goddard's books. Yeah, I think it was in that Goddard book. English guy, and he tied those upside down duns. They were popular for a long time, and they talked about the fish's field of vision and the window, that what they see first is actually going to be the wing. So if you're fishing a mayfly with a little taller wing, you may attract the fish's attention to start that process of coming for it a little bit sooner than if your wing is very small, because as it's floating down towards them, it takes that shorter wing longer for the fish to notice it in the cone of vision where they're sitting here. If a taller wing is coming at them, they can see it from farther away. So you may want to try having some with a little longer wings to see what the fish's reaction to it is. And you can always trim them on the water. You can have a little pair of scissors on your Swiss Army knife and trim these down a little bit later on the water. But you can do it at the tying desk too. And to me that just looks just right. So that's kind of my look there, is just a little longer than the hook shank is good. And yeah, if you're heading to the Metolius, in the next, well, pretty much every month from now until this day next year, this fly would have some pretty good game. Don't forget that, blue-wing olives on the Metolius are a year-round hatcher. In the summertime, even in July and August, you'll see blue-wing olives usually between about 5 and 7 in the evenings in those shadier spots along the river. They'll come off and be a pretty viable hatch and food source for those fish. So I know a lot of you that are on this Zoom like to fish the Metolius. So this time of year, blue-wing olives are usually kind of midday, like 1 to 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But in the summer, they'll wait till evening to pop off. So I'll tie one more.
Are they smaller this time of year?
They range, there's several different species of Baetis that we call blue-wing olives. And so the answer is, they tend to be 18s and 20s, but boy, there are times when you can see blue wings that'll be, 22s, God forbid, sometimes even 24s. We don't see those too much, but 18s and 20s to me are kind of the sweet spot. And I have a few 22s tucked into the fly box for those just in case times. But I don't fish too many 22s, which I guess is thankful. I can say that I don't fish too many 22s. I'm not I don't have young eyes anymore. All right. So show you an alternate way to tie this fly. If I was tying a bunch to get out to the river or to go on a guide trip, I'd actually probably start with my tail and just get a really quick body in, trim, and come in and do my wing. I'll post that. So I just lock that thread around the shank one time there after I got off of the posting of the far side wing. And I'll do it again. Now with this fly ride, it's pretty fibrous, and all the fibers want to go in one direction. So one thing that I like to do with this stuff is I'll just kind of manually, before I dub it on, I just kind of like to break it up. So it gets a little confused as to all the fibers aren't going in one direction, and plus they're shorter, and the shorter fibers definitely go onto the thread a lot better. And you can see I'm using just a minuscule amount of.
Are you in a class?
Dubbing.
Yeah,
Like a Zoom call or something?
yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want to be seen in the background.
My video's off.
But your sound isn't.
We can hear you.
Okay.
So you think this way of tying it's a little faster?
I think it's a little faster. Yeah, I doubt it makes that much difference, but if you're gonna sit down and tie a dozen, you know, at camp before the hatch or the night, you know, the night before or the morning of the day you're going fishing, that's probably ever so slightly faster. And I don't think any of us can argue that, you know, our butts and our backs could use a little break after sitting at the vise for a while. So you might as well do them as efficiently as you possibly can.
It's a good bug.
Yeah, really good bug. I'll show you guys while we're here, and it seems like we have some time. Been going for about an hour. I'm just going to show you a pattern that I've been having a lot of good luck with too. Again, mostly on spring creeks, and my number one spring creek is the Metolius, but certainly do enjoy heading over to the Fall River and fishing those fish, which can be picky little bastards from time to time. I'm going to use the same hook that I just did a bluing olive in. I'm going to switch over to a purple 8/0 thread. By the way, does anybody have any of these? I think they were called wishbone bobbins. They just have the opening right here at the top for the thread, so you don't have to use a threader. I think the company is out of business, but I have about 3 or 4 of them. And I gotta wish that company would come back. That's such a great bobbin. Okay, so purple thread. This fly came from an inspiration from a competitive fly fishing guy who was a guide that we had when we visited Tasmania. And he fished a lot of flies like this because they were really popular in Europe. So I just tied in a little, really popular in Europe where he did a lot of competitions. I just tied in some, just a little strand of medium mirage tinsel, which is a opalescent tinsel at the bend of the hook. And I'm going to just make 2 turns at the bend and then tie this down. Cut that off. And then I'm just going to kind of build up the body just a touch with the tying thread. Now, we've got CDC in natural gray. I'm gonna grab 2 CDC feathers. And I'm going to line them up with the tips evened out. So the tips are exactly aligned. All right, then I'm going to pinch them. Looks like that one just got a little out of alignment. I'm going to pinch them. And come in here right behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to tie in that little clump, pull it back just a little so I get the length. Lock that down, never losing tightness on that. I'm going to come in with some fine point scissors and trim that down. Then cover up that little hump with my tying thread. And then come underneath, holding that wing back. So this is a really popular style of fly in Europe. And it's very, very simple to tie. And again, it kind of, it has that mayfly, look to it. Perhaps the opal butt tag here is just an attractor, or perhaps it looks like, a little bit of the nymphal shuck is left over. CDC, of course, floats really well on its own. Put a little powdered floating in it, or some loon loxa or Tiemco dry magic in there, and then shake it up in some Shimazaki dry shake. That fly floats really well. You maintain it with an Amadou or dry fly patch in between fish. And I tie this one in an olive thread body too. And in fact, the other day when we were on the Metolius, I was using this fly in an olive thread body, and had Tina using this one that we just tied a moment ago. And it's just a super, super good, easy fly to tie.
Was there a name for that?
You
fly?
know,
Did they
there-
call it anything?
there is probably, we have a pretty similar fly at the shop that we get from Fulling Mill, and I can't remember the names of anything anymore, like I used to. I'm getting old. But anyway, I'll get you the name, Sherry. I just don't remember the name for it right now. But
Yeah, that one looks really simple and fast to be
Yeah.
able to whip that out.
I kind of remember you guys have some good friends in Idaho that I know are come to the fly tying shows, and Eric's bought some fly patterns from them. I think he has a what are those people's names, Sherry? The Idaho people?
Oh, that's Nate Brumley, Dry Fly Innovations.
Yeah. He had a really similar fly to this that Eric showed me in his box, or maybe I saw it when I was at the Albany show last. That was, basically just thread and a CDC feather, or a couple of CDC feathers over the eye of the hook. And I know that fly was kind of inspired by tough fishing on the Oahe. Yeah, let me tie one more, and then I'm going to go back into my camera, and I'm going to show you some flies that where this inspiration came from. So let me just finish this fly here, tie it again. So first thing I'm doing after covering the shank and thread is coming in with that opal tinsel.
How do you fish this, Jeff?
Fish it completely dry, drag free, on usually about a 16 to 20 foot 6X leader. Sometimes might go down to 7X with it, depending on where I am and what the fish's mood is. I love flies like this, that the fish haven't, fish in a hard fish river haven't seen a lot of flies like this. Most people don't trust flies like this. You might be sitting there in your tying room or your living room, wherever you're watching me, and going, yeah, right. But for real, this is, if you were in the hard fish waters in France or Slovenia, or we're in a competition someplace where those fish have been hit really hard by a lot of really good anglers, this is the type of fly that Lance and Devin are gonna go to with their dry fly fishing. It's what the competitive anglers trust. And hey, if it's good enough for them, it's sure as heck good enough for some dork like me who just likes to go fishing and doesn't need to win. Except over Tina. We gotta go, hun. Okay. Let's switch cameras here. Turn that off. Go to photos. And I'm gonna scroll down. I think we were in Tasmania in 2018. It wasn't July. Yep, here we go. Anybody been to Tasmania before?
Not me.
Not me.
It is probably one of the neatest places I've ever gone fishing. The lakes are basically, a lot of the lakes are like Hosmer and Crane Prairie, and that they're shallow with lots of weed beds, lots of insect life, big hatches. Yeah, here's my friend Tom at the tying desk at the lodge. This lady with the glasses on the right-hand side is Karen Brooks, and her and Karen and her husband Peter came out to Bend when the Federation had their big conclave in Bend for their 70, I think it was for their 50th or 75th, or
It's the 50th.
remember?
Yeah.
what anniversary that was for
Yeah,
the conclave?
50th anniversary. Yeah.
Your sound is off, Sherry.
Oh, it is?
No, it was my sound.
It's your sound.
Yeah.
We have another question here. Robin, do you have all 46 colors of fly right dubbing?
No, I just picked out my favorite ones for matching local hatches.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, here on February 24th, 2018 was my first ever introduction to this style of dry fly. And you can see there on the top of that, I guess it's a lid for the sugar on the table of the lodge. You can see that one on the top left next to the Perdigon is essentially the same fly that I just tied, only with an olive body. You can also see that fly there on the bottom is another dry fly that I took a lot of inspiration for that fly that I tied earlier that I call the Sparkle Dun Plus. Tom doesn't put a trailing shuck on it. And instead of putting a trailing shuck on, in between the wings, he puts a little pink poly yarn in there for a little extra strike indication, be able to track that fly on the water a little bit better. So anyway, those are a couple more ideas for you as you're tying these more simple mayfly patterns that really work. Also, that little pink strike indicator tab in the middle of those wings, besides being able to track the fly better on the water, really helps it float well too. Oh, here's
All right.
Dr. Brian Paris, and I have an important question for anyone with arthritis. Which one of these foods contains a...
I don't quite hear that. Whoever was talking, can you turn up your volume a little bit?
Here we're going to tie the CDC pheasant tail. To start the fly, I put a bead on.
I can't hear it.
I can't hear it either.
So Jeff, I know you've got some classes going on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
You want to tell our members about those classes, how they can go to your website?
Yeah.
To find out.
Yeah. So the classes that are, we've got 2 classes left on the Tuesdays. They're $10 a class. I did the whole session. I had 7 classes for $60. Got 2 classes left. Next week, I actually had this little Sparkle Dun Plus on the docket for next week, but then I decided that we would change that up a little bit because I was tying it tonight. I invited everybody from my class to tune in tonight and to watch how it's tied. And then, so next week I'm going to tie a Callibaetis mayfly that Dan Pebbles gave to me in the parking lot at Eastlake after a particularly successful day he had there, that I call the collaboration Callibaetis, because I don't really know where the fly originated from. I've seen Brian O'Keefe fishing a similar fly. Dan Pebbles maybe told me that he got it from O'Keefe. I can't remember for sure, but it's a fly that you can use this poly wing, or you can use deer hair wings. It's split like what we did here. So, you know, the skills that we learned splitting this poly could go into splitting deer hair, which is a lot more difficult than splitting, you know, a poly style wing. Has that olive green trailing shuck Zealand, like my bag of Zealand, like this, which matches the nymphal color of a Callibaetis really well. And then has a couple other little fancy body material and a grizzly hackle, and just the way it sits on the water. I've had days on the lakes when the Callibaetis were out, that especially with a little chop on the water, that they really like that fly because of the profile that it has and the way it sits in the water, and also how well it floats through the chop. So next week we're going to tie that. We're going to tie an Iris caddis, and then the last week we're tying a blended body chronomid, and then a balance leech using these new, let me see here, I got them here. If you haven't seen these yet, they're called Jig Bombs, and they're tungsten beads that, instead of tying a balance leech with a pin, which, you know, becomes, sometimes it bends, sometimes they break off when it's, you know, when you play and fish, sometimes you make a bad cast and it hits the motor or the gunnel of the boat as it's whizzing by at, you know, 150 miles an hour, and those pins will break off or bend, then the fly is useless. This makes tying a balance leech way more efficient, way easier. And it balances, you know, nearly as well as the pin method. So it's kind of the wave of the future for the balanced fly, I think. Even I saw a video recently, I think even Phil Rowley is going that way for a lot of his balance leeches now. So anyway, that's really cool. I know, let's see here. Fulling Mill has those beads too. They're called drop beads from Fulling Mill. Umpqua calls them jig bombs, and Hairline calls them insta jigs, but they're all the same. They're all the same thing, same style of bead, and the way they put the weight on the jig hook and where it goes out over the front of the eye, beyond the eye itself, helps keep that fly pretty balanced under an indicator. So seems like I had one more. I got to go back and look at what we talked about. I did change up the flies ever so slightly through the session from what we originally had planned to what we ended up tying, just to add value to the class and to show people really fun and interesting flies. My classes, you know, this is kind of my style. I don't tie terribly difficult flies to tie. What I do think I tie are flies that have a story and a reason behind them. You know, that are kind of guide style flies or competitor style flies that you can have, you know, a pretty easy time tying them, and it doesn't hurt too bad when you leave one in a tree or break one off because you're fishing 7X.
Well, I'd like you guys to stop by the Fly Fisher's Place, because Jeff has got a lot of new materials and tools, and it's an amazing what the remodel and taking out that back room that we had all that stuff stashed in, left a lot more room in the shop, and it really looks great.
Yeah, thanks.
So stop by.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Does anybody have any other questions?
We got people clapping and saying, thank you, thank you. I'd
Awesome.
like to tell you about the next
Thanks,
class.
Jeff.
You have a question?
Thanks, Jeff.
Ah, you're welcome.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And especially the added fishing part and originate where the flies originate from is always really an interesting piece for all of us. But next week, February 24th, Dick Robaugh is going to be back with us again. And he's going to show us a spruce moth pattern. And he's calling it the Twisted Sister. So that should be a really interesting class. So please join us, everybody, and continuing coming. We had a great, we had like 39 people here tonight at one time. I mean, it was really a lot of people came in, and I
Hey.
really appreciate everybody spending their time with us.
Hey, Sherry, before we get off, so I think you had somebody in a class that taught how to do split threads.
Yes.
Or yeah, and are you having anybody that's going to do split threads?
Well, I think Dick Robaugh did that the last on his last presentation.
Oh, okay. I
Well,
just bought this split thread tool, and I want to learn how to use it. So
Oh, okay.
can you send me a link or something that I could learn?
Let me see if I can find one that we've done before with split thread. It might have been last winter.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if not, I'll throw up YouTube and see if I can find it on YouTube.
And what's the name of the tool?
Well, this is the Stonefo split thread tool, and it's kind of cool. It's got a little gap here for the thread to go through, and then you push down on the spring, and you can see a little needle pops out of it.
Oh, okay.
There, yeah, and then anyway, that's you're supposed to put the thread through that gap, and then pull down on the lever, and that needle goes through the thread, splitting the thread, where you can then put your materials in. But I haven't really tried it yet. I want to. I'm a big fan of the Stonefo stuff. I've got their bobbins and this now, and I think
How
they
do you
make some
spell that?
pretty neat stuff.
it-
It's an Italian company, Stonfo, Stonefo.
Tonfo.
Mhm.
So do you carry both of those to shop?
Yeah,
The bobbin and the
and the
splitter?
splitter. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I just hoping that maybe somebody will come around and teach how to use it, or maybe I'll practice and teach how to use it next time I'm on this.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun and continue this throughout to the end of April. 18th is the last class, and everybody come on back. And if you want to join the Fly Tires Guild, just send me an email and I'll put you on the list. And right now, membership to the club is free anyway. So anyway, thank you all so much.
Really, you charged me $20 to be a part of this.
No way. We need to pay you to be a member of this. You're a complimentary member.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, thanks
thank you so
everybody
much.
for joining Sherry and I, and for your contributions and questions and comments and everything. It was awesome. So
This was a great
yeah,
class.
yeah, and I do apologize that the the iPhone only wants to focus when my hands get close, but I think when I was actually tying, and I try to be cognizant of getting my hand back in front of the vise so it brings in that focus again. But maybe next time I do this, I'll have a fancy new camera that can do a better job at that.
I'll get in touch with you. Al Beatty has found a real inexpensive camera that is really working out well for his classes.
Well, it's funny you say that because I tuned into a little bit of Al's live on Facebook a couple nights ago, and saw that somehow or another he had it either mounted to his body chest area, or it was on a tripod in front of him, and he had that green background, and I loved the look of it. So please share with what he's doing, because
he says it's a trail cam and it's real inexpensive. There's another he's got so many different cameras, but I'll get in touch with him and find out his latest and greatest for you.
Okay.
Jeff, I've been using a Nikon Z50. It's a crop sensor with a macro lens that I really like.
Yeah. And you just have it on a tripod on the opposite side of the vise from you?
I do. And then I
Yeah.
wear a green shirt to provide some contrast.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good.
And if you want to see what it looks like, just go to my Riverkeeper Fly YouTube channel. You can see a video using that setup.
Nice. Okay, I'll do it.
Or you could go over and knock on his door and tell him to show you his setup.
Yeah. Hey, John, show me your setup.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. It has been really, really good tonight. Nice group of people and good questions. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jerry.
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.